August 1942, Guadalcanal. Night presses down like a weight. The sea is black and quiet as a small boat cuts its engine and drifts toward shore. Boots touch sand without ceremony. No cheers, no orders shouted, only the sound of surf folding into itself behind them. 25 Marines step into the dark jungle fringe, rifles held low, eyes straining for shapes that refuse to form. Somewhere inland, insects scream, palms sway without wind. The air smells of rot and salt and cordite left over from earlier fighting. There is no front line here, no safe direction. Just a thin American perimeter miles away, and between it and this beach, a landscape the enemy already owns. The patrol moves forward anyway. They believe this will be quick. They believe they will return before dawn. They are wrong. Every day, we tell real stories from World War II. By subscribing to the channel and clicking the bell button, you help preserve these stories for future generations. August 7th, 1942. The first American offensive of the Pacific War hits the beach. U.S. Marines of the 1st Marine Division under Major General Alexander A. Vandergrift land on Guadalcanal in the Solomon Islands as part of Operation Watchtower. The prize is not a city or a harbor. It is a strip of coral and dirt, an unfinished Japanese airfield the Marines will rename Henderson Field. If the Japanese complete it, their aircraft can threaten the sea lanes between the United States, Australia, and the South Pacific Lifeline. If the Americans hold it, they gain a forward blade pointed at Japan's perimeter. The landing succeeds quickly on the island's north coast. The airfield is taken and work begins immediately. Filling craters, dragging fuel, building revetments, turning captured supplies into survival. But speed has a cost. The Marines come ashore light. Their logistics are fragile. Their map knowledge is thin. The jungle inland is not a backdrop. It is an enemy in its own right, swallowing patrols, distorting distance, turning a few hundred yards into an exhausting march. Then, within 48 hours, the sea delivers a shock. On the night of August 8-9, Allied naval forces suffer a devastating defeat off Guadalcanal at the Battle of Savo Island. In the dark, Japanese cruisers strike hard. The loss is not only ships, it is confidence. The Marines on Guadalcanal feel the truth settle in. Their shield at sea can crack, and when it does, they are alone on the island. Supply ships withdraw early. Ammunition becomes precious. Radio batteries, medical stores, and rations suddenly feel like countdown clocks. Inside the perimeter, the war turns intimate and immediate. Japanese aircraft begin to harass the airfield. Small contacts flicker in the tree line. Reports arrive half-formed. Enemy movement near the rivers, shadows near villages, boats along the coast. The Marines need intelligence, and they need it fast. They are building an airbase while simultaneously trying to understand, an island that refuses to be understood. And in that pressure, between rumor and necessity, one decision begins to take shape. Intelligence on Guadalcanal in August 1942 is thin, contradictory, and urgent. Japanese forces have not vanished inland. They are watching. Small units move along the coast, west of the American perimeter, particularly near the Matanikau River and Point Cruz, an area of tangled jungle, coconut groves, and narrow beaches that funnel movement into predictable paths. Prisoners are few. Interrogations yield fragments. Some reports suggest isolated enemy elements. Others hint at organized resistance preparing for counterattack. At the center of this uncertainty is Lieutenant Colonel Frank B. Goettge, the 1st Marine Division's intelligence officer. Goettge is not an outsider chasing glory. He is a veteran Marine, a planner, and a man under pressure to produce clarity where none exists. The division needs to know what lies west of its lines. How many Japanese are there? How they are supplied? Whether any are willing to surrender. There is a belief, shared by some officers early in the campaign, that certain Japanese soldiers, cut off and disorganized, might give themselves up. It is a dangerous assumption, born more from hope than evidence. Japanese doctrine and battlefield behavior have already shown a resistance to surrender that American forces are only beginning to understand. But on Guadalcanal, every scrap of intelligence feels worth the risk. The patrol is assembled quickly, 25 men, including Marines and Navy personnel, some experienced, others new to jungle warfare. They are armed lightly for mobility. There is no heavy radio, no artillery support. The plan is simple on paper. Travel by boat west along the coast, land at night, locate enemy elements, gather intelligence, possibly make contact, then return overland or by sea before daylight exposes them. Navigation is imprecise. The coastline looks different in darkness. Jungle edges blur into shadow. The men know this is not a standard patrol, but they trust the chain of command and the belief that speed and surprise will protect them. Shortly before midnight on August 12th, the boat cuts its engine offshore. The patrol disembarks. The sea slips away behind them as the craft withdraws, leaving the men alone on an enemy-held stretch of coast. They step inland believing they are observers. In reality, they are already inside a Japanese position. Human angle. They go in as individuals first and Marines second. In the dark, rank is quieter. Names matter more than insignia. A canteen clinks once and is steadied by instinct. A hand touches a shoulder to signal movement. In August 1942, the men on Guadalcanal are already exhausted. Days of heat, digging, carrying, and sleepless alarms. Their bodies are running on salt, adrenaline, and the brittle discipline that forms when survival becomes routine. Some of them have only been on the island a few days. They have learned the perimeter's shape and the airfield's dust. They have not learned the jungle at night. The fear here is not panic. It is a constant tightening in the chest, a quiet awareness that the enemy doesn't have to be seen to be close. Every step inland is a wager, that the branch snap won't be heard, that the silhouette won't be noticed, that the wrong breath won't carry. For the men who will not return, the last moments are not cinematic. They are small and physical. Damp sand under boots, sweat cooling too fast, the weight of a rifle in hands that don't want to shake. Tactical angle. On paper, the patrol's logic has a clear shape: speed, surprise, and information. In practice, the concept is fragile from the start. A small unit, inserted by boat at night, has limited options the moment things go wrong. The sea behind them is not an escape route. It's a boundary. The jungle ahead is not cover. It's a maze. Without a strong radio link or supporting fires, the patrol is tactically isolated. If they stumble into a prepared position, they cannot call down help fast enough to matter. The Japanese, meanwhile, have advantages that don't show on American maps. They know the ground. They move well at night. They can set ambushes along natural funnels, beach trails, creek lines, breaks in the vegetation, where a patrol must pass if it wants to move at all. And when contact comes in jungle darkness, contact is rarely a single event. It becomes a chain reaction, a burst of fire, men dropping, commands swallowed by noise and formations breaking into desperate clusters. The Goettge Patrol is stepping into a tactical environment where the margin for error is not thin. It is almost non-existent. Technological angle. On Guadalcanal, technology does not fail dramatically. It fails quietly. A rifle is powerful on a range. In jungle night, its value depends on what the shooter can confirm: shape, distance, direction, friend or enemy. Visibility collapses to a few yards. Muzzle flashes briefly paint trees and faces, then vanish. Sound ricochets off vegetation and terrain, turning direction into guesswork. Even disciplined fire becomes scattered when men cannot see what they are aiming at. Radios, when carried, are vulnerable to moisture, battery limits, and the simple problem of terrain. A patrol without a reliable set is cut off from the perimeter's artillery and mortar tubes, which might otherwise reshape an ambush into a rescue. Without that link, the fight stays local, fought by whoever is present and whoever can still move. Navigation tools are equally unforgiving. In 1942, there is no GPS, no night vision. A compass and a map can tell you where you should be. Not where you are when jungle blocks landmarks and the coastline looks the same for miles. If a patrol lands slightly off its intended point, the difference can be fatal. It means different trails, different enemy positions, different chances of being seen. In this environment, a weapon can feel empty, not because it lacks ammunition, but because it cannot solve the real problem, identifying and controlling the fight before the enemy does. Leadership, moral angle. The most dangerous thing on Guadalcanal is not the Japanese rifleman, it is the pressure to know. Vandergrift's division is holding a vital airfield with limited supplies, uncertain naval cover, and an enemy that can choose when and where to strike. Intelligence becomes a currency that can buy survival. Every officer feels it. Every gap in knowledge is a threat, and that pressure flows downward until it becomes an order carried by a small group of men into darkness. Goettge's decision, whether judged harshly or sympathetically, sits inside that reality. He is not gambling for sport, he is trying to reduce uncertainty. But leadership is not only the willingness to take risk, it is the ability to measure what the men will pay if the calculation is wrong. The moral weight is this: when you send a patrol into enemy territory at night with limited support, you are not only testing the enemy, you are testing the boundaries of your own assumptions. On Guadalcanal, one assumption is about to die, and with it, most of the men who carried it. The landing is clean. That is what makes it worse. For a few minutes, the patrol moves with the quiet confidence of men who believe the hardest part is behind them. The beach is a pale strip in the darkness. The jungle line is a wall. Somewhere ahead, faint trails cut between palms and low brush, leading inland toward the villages and the river mouths. Then, the night changes. The first shots do not sound like a battle. They sound like a door slammed in the dark, sudden, close, and final. Gunfire erupts from positions the Marines did not see, from angles that make no sense until men begin to fall and the geometry becomes clear. The patrol has walked into a prepared kill zone. In jungle fighting, the opening seconds decide everything. A unit that can form, return fire, and maneuver has a chance. A unit that fractures becomes a series of lone fights. The Goettge Patrol is hit hard enough, fast enough, that cohesion starts to dissolve immediately. Men drop in the sand and the grass. Others throw themselves flat, trying to find the source of fire through a screen of trunks and shadows. Orders, if they are shouted, are swallowed by the roar of rifles and the cracking whip of bullets passing close. A flare would expose them. Silence would kill them. In that moment, there is no perfect choice, only motion. Some Marines try to push forward into the brush, believing aggression will break the ambush. Others pull back toward the beach, seeking space and the faint promise of escape. But the beach is not safety. It is open ground, a strip of pale sand that turns bodies into targets. The Japanese fire is controlled in bursts, disciplined, close, and timed to movement. The patrol is not fighting a scattered handful of men. It is fighting an enemy that has prepared for exactly this kind of approach. Within minutes, the patrol is no longer a patrol. It is a handful of survivors, separated by darkness, trying to stay alive long enough to find water, cover, and a way back to American lines. And on the shoreline of Guadalcanal, the ocean keeps rolling in, indifferent, while the jungle closes over the sound of the dying. What happens next is not recorded as a single fight, but as fragments. Movements pieced together later from the few men who make it back. Some survivors reach the water. They wade or swim along the coast, keeping their heads low, letting the surf mask sound and shape. The distance is brutal. Salt burns the eyes, muscles cramp. At least one man is wounded and bleeding as he moves, the current tugging at his gear. There is no rescue waiting, only the hope that the coastline will eventually curve back toward American positions. Inland, the night belongs to the Japanese. Those, Marines who cannot reach the water, are hunted in small pockets. Jungle at night offers no clear escape routes, only choices between movement and silence, each with its own risk. A man who runs can be heard. A man who stays still can be found at dawn. The enemy knows the terrain and uses it patiently, cutting off trails, waiting for sound, closing in where resistance fades. By morning, the shooting has stopped. Back at the American perimeter, there is no radio contact, no return signal, no sound of boots on coral sand. Dawn reveals nothing except absence. The patrol is listed as missing. Hours pass, then days. Search efforts push cautiously west, finding signs of combat. Spent cartridges, disturbed ground, but no formation to recover, no unit to count. The realization settles slowly and then all at once. The patrol has been destroyed. The loss is not just numerical, it shatters an idea. The belief that Japanese forces might surrender easily, the belief that limited reconnaissance could safely probe enemy-held jungle at night, the belief that uncertainty can always be chased down by speed. From this moment forward, Guadalcanal hardens. Patrols change. Assumptions die. The perimeter becomes tighter, more suspicious, less willing to trust the dark. The Goettge Patrol does not return, but its disappearance redraws the rules of the campaign, and every Marine on the island feels the shift. By daylight, the island looks ordinary again. Green ridgelines, bright water, heat rising off the sand. But inside the perimeter, the mood is different. Patrol schedules continue. Weapons are cleaned. Positions are reinforced. And under it all is a single fact that cannot be worked around. A team of 25 men went out into the night and did not come back. At first, commanders treat it like uncertainty. Radios fail, units get delayed, men take the wrong trail. Guadalcanal is already full of small disappearances. Single soldiers lost between foxholes, messengers swallowed by jungle stretcher-bearers who never find the aid station. The difference here is scale. There is no trickle of returns, no gradual accounting. Search efforts push west with caution, because the very act of searching risks repeating the same mistake. Reconnaissance elements probe the beach and the jungle edge. They look for a sign of withdrawal, a place where the patrol regrouped. They find evidence that tells a harsher story, a sudden fight at close range, and the kind of scattered traces that appear when men are cut down before they can organize. Expended ammunition, disturbed sand, scraps of equipment abandoned because survival demanded speed. For the families, the language becomes formal and unbearable. Missing, presumed, words that delay grief without preventing it. For the Marines still holding Henderson Field, the effect is immediate and personal. The night is no longer just a time of danger. It becomes a system the enemy controls. The jungle is no longer an unknown. It becomes an intelligent statement in itself. If you cannot see, you cannot dominate. And if you cannot dominate, you can be erased. The loss of the patrol becomes a warning passed quietly from unit to unit, a memory that changes how men step off a trail, how they listen, how they treat every shadow as potentially occupied. Because on Guadalcanal, the absence of 25 voices is not silence, it is information. The consequences unfold in doctrine, not speeches. After the patrol's loss, American leaders on Guadalcanal become more cautious about night movement beyond secured lines. Reconnaissance does not stop. If anything, it becomes more essential, but it becomes more methodical. Patrols are better supported. Routes are reconnoitred in daylight when possible. Assumptions about enemy willingness to surrender are treated as dangerous until proven otherwise. The island teaches, and it teaches brutally. The Japanese can appear as scattered elements and still fight with cohesion. They can be invisible until the first burst of fire and then suddenly everywhere. The disappearance also settles into the division's memory as a leadership lesson written in blood. Intelligence is necessary, but it has to be earned with systems, not optimism. A commander can be brave and still be wrong. A plan can be logical and still walk into the one thing it cannot survive. An enemy prepared to meet it in darkness at close range. Over time, the administrative record catches up to the battlefield reality. Men first listed as missing are later carried as killed. Names are fixed into the institutional memory of the Corps and the war's cemeteries and memorials. For some families, the lack of remains becomes its own wound, an unclosed chapter that lasts decades. On Guadalcanal, the patrol's story does not end with the ambush. It continues in the behavior of the men who remain, in how they post extra listening posts at night, in how they learn to read the jungle by absence as much as by presence, in how they stop expecting the enemy to behave in ways that feel familiar. Because the Goettge Patrol is not remembered only for how it died, it is remembered for what it changed. It makes the Marines on Guadalcanal understand that this campaign will not be won by boldness alone. It will be won by endurance, discipline, and a growing respect for an opponent who refuses to be simplified. And when the next patrol steps off the perimeter, the men who go carry something heavier than ammunition. They carry the knowledge of what happened to the last group that walked into the dark and did not come back. The Goettge Patrol does not alter the war with a dramatic victory or a decisive map movement. It changes something quieter and more enduring. It forces a reckoning with reality. On Guadalcanal, American forces learn that intelligence cannot be gathered the same way it was imagined on paper. The jungle erases margins. Night favors those who prepare for it. Technology, doctrine, and courage only matter if they fit the environment in which they are used. A rifle, a rank, even a plan can become irrelevant in seconds if the enemy controls time and terrain. The loss also sharpens leadership. It reminds commanders that urgency is not a substitute for certainty, and that sending men forward is always a moral act as much as a tactical one. Decisions ripple outward, into families, into unit memory, into how the next generation of soldiers is trained. Most of all, the patrol leaves a human imprint. 25 men vanish from the order of battle, but not from history. Their absence becomes instruction. Their fate becomes restraint. Their memory becomes part of how the Marines on Guadalcanal survive long enough to hold Henderson Field and push the campaign forward. In war, not every turning point is marked by a flag raised or a line crossed. Some are marked by silence, and by the knowledge that the night, once underestimated, must now be treated with respect, or it will take everything.